You're going to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name's Jimmy. It's boring. And I saw your videotape on how you move objects, and it was terrific, just amazing. Uh, the only problem with you and the difference between you and me, you went and showed it to the government, and they took it away, and I'm not showing mine to the government anymore. I showed it once, but they didn't believe me. So real quick, I want to show you my engine. And this is a 2-cylinder engine, 400 horsepower, and I move objects this way along on wheels, like a bus, a truck, a car, an airplane with, this is free energy, there's no input, and basically I work on a vacuum. Both of these cylinders are totally vacuum with inert gases, helium, and the other 5 gases, which are xenon, krypton, and neon. And what I do is I take energy from one cylinder, transfer it from this one, and take energy from this one, transfer it through all this maze of wires. I don't have any power at all whatsoever. The power must come from the empty cylinder to the firing cylinder, and then the firing cylinder switches it back to the empty cylinder and fires the empty cylinder, and back and forth and so on. I use a coil just like a regular car. And I use 24 volts, so that's the only input I have, 24 volts. This is an alternator down here, and this is just like a regular car, and all this alternator does is charge up the batteries. It's not hooked up yet. Charge up the batteries, so we keep 24 volts always, like your car, and just you got to keep it all charged up. Around this side, John, this is a timing can that we built. And basically I time the firing sequence of the spark plug, is all it's for, and it times the coil, because each coil is separately functioning, and these are the switches here for the various coils with a timing sequence. So basically I have the coils, the timing sequence, and then I have resistors over here. These are variable resistors. And the reason for the resistors is I create so much energy here that I have to get rid of most of it. Basically, I create somewhere around 1,000 volts with about 600 plus amperage. And the volts are fine. I can use the volts. I can't use the amperage because they'll burn my electrodes. So what I do is I get rid of all this energy. 600, maybe 1,000 amps we could use to light up the house, but for the time being I don't need it, so I get rid of it. And that's about it. Down there I just have 2 batteries, and actually the 2 batteries are just for the spark plug, to fire the spark plug and to put 24 volts. These coils will take 24 volts, and that's the only reason for the spark plugs. And the engine basically runs by itself in a vacuum, in a void, and the energy comes from the vacuum and the void. Now over here we're going to move real quickly over to a 1-cylinder engine, and I started out with this 1-cylinder engine. We have a small Tesla coil here, and like you, John, I got a bunch of old parts. Most of this came from electronic sales, and this is an old 1930 switch here, and I got a bunch of old other switches here you can see. I have a system here. This is a variac which I can adjust the RPMs. This is strictly RPM, and this is an old beat-up distributor that I use. And once again, the coil and a spark discharger here, Tesla coil, and the cylinder here with 2 coils. Normally I use 3, but I wanted to see the reaction. I wanted to see, you'll have to see the videotapes. I wanted to see what is happening in this empty chamber, in this vacuum chamber, in which I have a spark, like your car, but no gas, nothing. Empty, nothing. And the biggest explosion happens in there, and this piston here is slammed down, and there's no way in the world even 5 guys can pull this piston down, and it'll turn the crankshaft and of course turn the car or the bus or the truck. Over here, John, real fast, is an old lab in which I use to treat the gases. And here I have a Tesla coil situation in which I have, these are coils wound one way. Inside here there's another coil that's wound the other way. Then here I have a focus coil wound this way, and the other side I have a focus coil wound the other way. And then the gases come right through here, and I treat them. Here I get these tubes and I break them up. I put a new envelope, glass envelope, and I put stems on it so my gas comes in here, and I bombard it with cathode rays. And once they're bombarded with cathode rays, then it'll go into another component. I have X-ray tubes. I have high-frequency tubes. This is a high-frequency tube here. Actually, it's a cathode ray tube. And this is a cathode ray tube, and I take and put little holes in there and put little stems and run my gases in there and treat them. This is a reverse polarity tube, and these are iron filings that I use to affect the gases as the iron filings are magnetized through a focus coil. And I have some more high frequency tubes. These are hydrogen retention coils, and of course my vacuum gauge. Over here, real fast, John, is my piston. Very different from a car piston. It's hollow. Empty. So this is a vacuum. I draw a vacuum through here, and this one goes here. And this will go up and down with the crankshaft. This remains steady. This is bolted onto the other engine. And I have an anode, cathode, copper, negative, positive. And these are electrodes, and this is tantalum, in which I create X-ray, gamma rays, etc. in here, which affects the gases, which affects the vacuum, which affects the positron. This is just a vacuum tube in here, and my gauge is over here. And I tested all these gases in here, and you can see the big explosion. You'll have to see my video. The big explosion. And since this is plexiglass, carbon derivative, it pulls the carbon atoms, and of course I get soot. But that was only for the purpose of looking inside the atom to see what the release of energy looks like. And you can see all of them are basically the same way. And we had hundreds and hundreds of experiments, and we were able to see energy being released by the atom. And then over here, I'm doing a brand new lab altogether, and I can test gases in here, and we can look. I guess once again we have Windows 99, 96, and we can see our gas, and I test them in here with high frequencies, and always in a vacuum. This whole system here, John, is in a vacuum. This is a purifier in which I eliminate from my gases any radiation from what I call cosmic radiation, which would affect my gas. My gas has to be totally pure of cosmic radiation. That's what this little gadget is for. This is an ion gauge tube in which I ionize my gases to perfection, and these also, as you can see, I'm still working on it. Maybe it'll be ready for your next birthday. And this is an argon depolarizer, and this is basically my my control panel. Very simple, not very complex. And over here I have a magnetic coil. Actually, I have 4 of them. And I have magnetic coils, high frequency, and then my gas going through the center. And as you can see, we're not quite ready yet. But anyway, we're here, maybe a couple months. I'll prepare my gases here, and they're ready to be put into the engine. And then, of course, the engine's ready to run for the next 10 years, I hope. No input, no exhaust, no heat, no cooling system required, very little maintenance, 1 moving part. There you are. Happy birthday, John. Next time I'll see you. These are my gases now that I do buy, and you can buy them anywhere. They're raw gases. Helium, neon, argon, krypton. I'll buy them raw. I'll treat them over there. When they're ready, we put them in this little bottle, and they're ready to fuel any of my engines anywhere in the world. So you can take this to the moon and fuel the engine, and we've got power up there for the next 10, 20 years. There's enough in here to fuel maybe 10,000 automobiles for the next 10 years. Not bad.
Wow.
Over and out.
Thank you.
Happy birthday, John.
What do you
I'm
say to
Nancy.
this?
What?
What do you say to this?
What do I say to this?
Yeah.
Hubba hubba. It's the beginning of the future right now.